All right, Troy, I got a question.
Oh boy, here we go.
What's the strangest exercise you've ever done?
The strangest exercise. I actually practiced some exercising for martial arts sometimes, and they have some pretty strange things that you have to do to kind of stretch.
Mine was a device you put around your middle, and it was supposed to do the abs for you.
Oh yeah,
A
yeah.
buddy of mine bought that,
Oh
and
wow,
I put it on. It didn't work.
it didn't work.
Not at all. Oh, the reason I asked that is the question that we were asked today has to do with exercise. They
Hmm.
wrote in and said, "Is it appropriate for a Christian to do yoga poses in the privacy of her home, even though each yoga pose is a worship acknowledgement to Hindu deities?"
Hindu deities. Well, that's interesting. I didn't even know this was a thing until I started doing a little bit of looking into it, and it's interesting. There's people out there on both sides of the argument that absolutely should not do it, and then others that are trying to justify it through calling it Christian yoga.
When I think of yoga, first of all, I've done yoga before. We didn't talk about that in show prep, but I have because with my back issues,
Uh huh.
they say one of the best things you can do is stretches.
Uh
And
huh.
basically, most of yoga, and I'm sure somebody technical in all this knows more, but the stretching that you're
Mm-hmm.
doing can help. In
Mm-hmm.
particular, the downward dog.
I was wondering if you're going to mention that one. And I know a lot of people, and I myself have even practiced it just for that very reason, for stretching and just trying to improve your circulation and things like that.
Now, it's interesting in the question. It talks about the appropriateness for a Christian to do it in their home,
I think that's important.
because in all things we want to be modest.
Amen.
And sometimes, and it's not just yoga, a lot of different forms of exercise, if we're not careful, could put us into a position that might not be the most modest pose.
Right.
And as wanting to project purity and holiness, we try and be careful of that. And so I'm not saying you can't do it in public, but I would be aware of it. And a lot of times when people think yoga, they think yoga pants and sports apparel that isn't always modest. And, a Christian should be concerned about that if they're
Absolutely.
participating.
That's right. Because our conduct needs to be worthy of a Christian. I mean, in Philippians, we read, only let your conduct be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so we need to be paying attention to how we're presenting ourselves. People need to be able to see Jesus in us. And so I'm sure even Jesus stretched from time to time whenever he needed to. But I'm sure he did it in a way that was, of course, in a manner that would be pleasing to God.
Now, the particular question, though, is because the poses are supposed to be attributed to a god, it doesn't make it wrong. Well, that kind of goes back to the eating of meats in 1 Corinthians chapter 8,
Right?
where you had some people that really struggle with this idea of, can I eat meat that had been offered to idols? And Paul's answer to that was, yes, you can eat it. Because what is your purpose in what you're doing? If you're doing it to the Hindu deities, then it would be wrong. And no, don't do that. But if it's downward dog, or what's the one to the sun?
The pose to the sun. I mean,
Yeah.
that's showing clearly that you are kind of rendering homage to a Hindu god.
Yeah, if you're doing it for the purpose of that, then that would be wrong. But if you're doing it because you're stretching, building muscle, and you realize that who might have intended for this to be used this way, you don't use it, then it would be perfectly fine. It's kind of like around Christmas time, a lot of people get upset over like Christmas trees. Well, originally
Hmm.
the whole concept was
Hmm.
a pagan ritual. In fact, many of those rituals that we use for our secular observance of Christmas had pagan origins. But it's not when I put a Christmas tree in my home. I'm not worshiping some tree god or anything like that. So the question is, what is your heart? And if you're
That's
not
right.
doing it to worship the Hindu deities, then you're fine doing it in the privacy of your home. There'd be nothing unbiblical about that.
Amen.